The November 17, 2020 regular meeting of the Mentor Exempted Village Board of Education is called to order. This meeting is being held in accordance with Section 3313.15 of the Ohio Revised Code. Mrs. Jessling, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Briner,
Here.
Mr. Buckley,
Here.
Mrs. Hassan,
Here.
I'm present. Mr. Tuttle.
Here.
Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of
America.
and to the
and to the
republic
republic for which it stands, one nation,
under
under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice
justice
for
for
all. At this time, I would like to appoint Mrs. Jessling, Treasurer Pro Tem for tonight's meeting. That having done, could I have a motion for the approval of the minutes of the October 10th, 2020 special board meeting and October 13th, 2020, the regular board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. I would like to welcome everyone to the November 17th, 2020 regular meeting of the Exempted Village Board of Education. Prior to this evening, each board member has received for their review and consideration the agenda and materials associated with each agenda item for the board's approval via the district's Board of Education agenda system, Board Docs. The public can access the agenda through the school district's website. The agenda is available through the district's website for public viewing the Sunday prior to the board meeting. Board members have the opportunity to call the superintendent and chief financial officer for information concerning agenda items to request, if needed, additional information. This meeting is being video conferenced live and can be accessed at https://www.youtube.com/user/Cardinal TV Mentor Ohio. Tonight's meeting will not have public participation. The public can email the board members, superintendent, and chief financial officer with any comments or questions. Email addresses and telephone number can be found on the website www.mentorschools.net. This meeting is being televised on a delayed basis and will be shown on Spectrum Cable, channel 1026 in Mentor and channel 1025 in Mentor on the Lake. This meeting is also being videotaped and will be shown on our YouTube channel, Cardinal TV Mentor Ohio.
Mr. Buckley, we need a roll call for the minutes approval.
Thank you. Ms. Jessling, you call the roll.
Yes. Mrs. Briner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hassan,
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle,
Yes.
I vote yes, and Mr. Buckley.
Yes. Next on the agenda is the superintendent's report and recommendations. Mr. Porter.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board. I have the following recommendations listed under the consent agenda and recommend approval of items 5A1 through 5A5.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Jessling, could you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Tuttle,
Yes.
Mrs. Briner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hassan,
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Buckley.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. President, members of the board, this evening we are pleased to recognize several Mentor High School students and staff members who are being honored for their outstanding achievements. I would like to start by recognizing our Mentor High School National Merit Semifinalists and commended students. Of the 1.5 million entrants some 50,000 with the highest PSAT index scores qualify for recognition in the National Merit Scholarship Program. In September, these high scores are notified through their schools that they have qualified as either commended students or semifinalists. In late September, more than 2/3 of the approximately 50,000 high scorers on the PSAT received letters of commendation in recognition of their outstanding academic promise. Commended students are named based on a nationally applied selection score that may vary from year to year and is typically below the level required for participants to be named semifinalists in their respective states. Although commended students do not continue in the competition for national merit scholarships, some of these students do become candidates for special scholarships sponsored by corporations and businesses. In early September, about 16,000 students, or approximately 1/3 of the 50,000 high scorers, are notified they have qualified as semifinalists. Semifinalists are the highest scoring entrants in each state. In February, some 15,000 semifinalists are notified that they have advanced to finalist standing. All winners of merit scholarship awards are chosen from the finalist group. Beginning in March and continuing to mid-June, the National Merit Scholarship Corporation notifies approximately 7,600 finalists that they have been selected to receive one of the following 3 types of merit scholarship awards: either national merit, a corporate-sponsored merit scholarship, or a college-sponsored merit scholarship. At this time, I would like to introduce our semifinalists. Brendan Friedrich, Nathan Rolfes, Sadie Ziedrich. And now our National Merit Commended students. Hutch Baird, Costas Bogantis, Sarah Freeman, Angelina Golya, Jacob Kanuk, Lincoln Knudsen, Nicholas Kunst, Benjamin Lerner, Jeff Smick, and Ellie Stevenson. Congratulations to all of these students. Mr. President and members of the board, at this time, I would like to recognize 2 coaches. First, our Mentor High School basketball coach, Mr. Bob Krasancic, for being named the Ohio High School Basketball Coaches Association Coach of the Year. Coach Krasancic has been a head basketball coach for 40 years, with 27 years being at Mentor. He has a combined 654 total wins, ranking him 7th in Ohio history. He has earned 2 state championships, one in 1993 in Girard and the other in 2013 in Mentor. He is one of only 4 coaches to win state titles at different schools and divisions, and he has been in the state Final Four 3 times, in 1993, 2010, and 2013. In addition to being named the Ohio High School Basketball Coaches Association Coach of the Year, Coach Krasancic has been nominated for National Coach of the Year. Coach Krasancic is very deserving of the honor, and we are very happy for him. Shortly, we will see a video that will be included for both of our coaches. And Mr. President and members of the board, I would also like to recognize our Mentor High School hockey coach, Mr. Paul Makito, for being named the Ohio High School Hockey Coaches Association Coach of the Year. Coach Makito has been a head hockey coach for 14 years, with 11 years being at Mentor. He has a career record of 154, 137, and 10. He has earned 4 championship titles, 2 in the Greater Cleveland Conference, Red Northeast Division and 2 in the Greater Cleveland Barron Cup. Coach Makito is named Greater Cleveland High School Hockey League Coach of the Year in the 17-18, 18-19, and 19-20 seasons. He was named News Herald High School Hockey Coach of the Year in 18-19 and 19-20. And he was named Ohio High School Athletic Association Ice Hockey Coach of the Year in 19-20. Coach Makito is also very deserving of this honor, and we are equally happy for him. At this time, we will watch a short video as a tribute to both of our coaches.
This year, 2 of our Mentor High School coaches received awards for their 2019-2020 season. Basketball head coach Bob Krasancic received the Ohio High School Basketball Coaches Association Coach of the Year Award after a spectacular 2019-2020 season. This team's run at a state title may have been cut short due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but not before a double overtime regional semifinal victory against Medina. Coach Krasancic is not new to awards after 40 years as a head coach, 27 years here in Mentor. He's won 2 state championships, has a total of 654 total wins, ranking 7th in Ohio history, has been nominated Coach of the Year, was the Associated Press Ohio Coach of the Year 3 different years, and went to the state Final Four tournament 3 times. Hockey head coach Paul Makito received the Ohio High School Athletic Association Ice Hockey Coach of the Year. In his 9th season as head coach, Paul led the Cardinals to their best ever season in program history with 33 wins, 3 losses, and 1 tie. Their season concluded as the Greater Cleveland High School Hockey League Barron Cup champions and as Ohio High School Athletic Association Kent District runner-up. The first time since 2008, the team received that distinction. Coach Makito was the Greater Cleveland High School Hockey League Coach of the Year for the 2017-18 season, 2018-19 season, and the 2019-20 season. He also received the News Herald High School Hockey Coach of the Year for the past 2 seasons. Congratulations to both coaches, and we wish you luck this upcoming season.
Everyone's still
Mr.
muted.
Porter, Mr. Porter, Mr. Porter, please unmute. Sorry about that. And everybody, go ahead, Mr. Porter, if you can start
Okay.
from the top.
Oh, thank you. I was just congratulating all of our students and our 2 coaches for all of these incredible honors this evening. Mr. President and members of the board, I'm recommending approval of agenda items C1 related to certified personnel and C2 through C5, all related to human resource matters.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Is that Mrs. Briner
Yes.
Second.
and Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
Thanks.
Mrs. Jessling, please call the roll.
Mrs. Briner,
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle,
Yes.
Mrs. Hassan,
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Buckley.
Yes.
Thank you. This concludes my portion of tonight's agenda.
And next on the agenda is the Board of Education report and recommendations. Under business, number 1, the appointment of the following Mentor Public Library trustee. Could I have a motion and to vote on her reassignment?
That
So
would be
moved.
Dan. Yes, second.
Who did the moved?
Tom.
Tom, thank you.
Mrs. Jessling, please call the roll.
Mrs. Briner,
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle,
Yes.
Mrs. Hassan.
Yes.
I vote yes. And Mr. Buckley?
Yes. Next under business is a resolution authorizing the sale of used surplus equipment by public auction.
So moved. Second.
Mrs. Jessling, please call the roll.
Mrs. Briner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hassan,
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Buckley?
I vote yes. Next on the agenda is the resolution to approve the chief financial officer's compensation.
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Mrs. Jessling, please call the roll.
Mrs. Briner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hassan,
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Buckley?
Yes. Next on the agenda is the legislative report. Mr. Tuttle.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley. Excuse me. So legislators prepared for school funding plan for the lame duck session. Members of the Ohio House of Representatives have been working to draft a substitute bill of House Bill 305, the K through 12 education funding bill that was introduced early in the 133rd General Assembly, which started back in October 2019. I added that. Representative Gary Shear, Circleville, will be working with Rep. John Patterson of Jefferson in place of Speaker Robert Cupp, who asked Shear to take over when he assumed his leadership position. The substitute bill is expected to be, and actually was released, along with simulations of the legislation. Companion legislation that mirrors the substitute bill will be also introduced in the Ohio Senate by Senators Peggy Lerner and Vernon Sykes. Lerner made the following remarks to reporters regarding the timing of the companion bill. We're working as hard as we can to get it as clean as we can, knowing that we've got a very short time frame in lame duck. As the House planned its lame duck session, the substitute version had been passed on and started hearings in the House Finance Subcommittee on primary and secondary education rather than the larger House Finance Committee. Patterson provided the following remarks to reporters on the rationale for the committee change. The subcommittee has less members. Therefore, it gives us a little more flexibility with meetings and such. Time is not our ally right now. Sponsors in both the Ohio House and the Ohio Senate are encouraged that the legislation can pass during lame duck with both chambers working together. Patterson made the following remarks about the importance of passing this legislation. And I quote, "I shudder to think what happens if we don't. There is currently no real school funding formula out there." Lerner also made the following remarks about the likelihood of this bill passing. "Given the groundwork that's been laid here, I think it's possible that if we really work hard and are willing to put in some extra hours, then we can get this done in time. But it's a challenge. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it." I would like to add that, so the first testimony that was taken place on this week, in fact, was that today? I believe so. They had 26 speakers or giving testimony that were proponents of the bill, and one opponent spoke out as well. Moving on, education bills awaiting a floor vote in the House include House Bill 367 and House Bill 123. House Bill 123 requires public schools to implement certain programs on and provide instruction in suicide awareness and prevention and violence prevention. The bill was amended in the Senate to provide $2.5 million in payments to dropout prevention and recovery e-schools that are not operated by a for-profit entity, and that received an exceeds standards rating on their most recent graduation component of the state report card. Due to the bill being amended in the House Senate, the House will need to vote on whether they concur with those changes. Any thoughts or comments on those?
I just had a question for Mr. Porter. Do you have a sense of whether the new legislation for school funding will be beneficial for Mentor, keep things relatively the same, or create hardship for Mentor?
Without having Dan's backup on this, what I'm hearing is it would have some slight advantages, but the advantages would start to kick in over time. They would start to, it's a phase-in model, and I believe the phase-in time is up to 6 years before we start to see a little bit more. But it's heading in the right direction, and it's a funding formula. This would be the first very legitimate attempt at something in recent years. And I think a lot of people are hopeful that this goes through for a number of reasons. So without having Dan's backup on that, that's sort of the 30,000 foot view of what I'm hearing.
Do we think it has a minimum per student kind of approach, or, rather than some larger amount that's divvied up in some difficult to follow formula?
What I've heard, Dan mentioned recently is it doesn't drill down necessarily to the student, but to the number of classroom and to the number of staff members in classrooms we would be operating, which for this type of a model seems to maybe make more sense.
Okay. Thanks. Because I saw that mentioned in our OSBA mailings, and I wasn't sure what your point of view was. So thank you so much. Thanks, Tom.
You're welcome.
There are no more questions for Mr. Tuttle. It's time for the Chief Financial Officer's report and recommendations. Mrs. Jessling.
Okey-dokey. Without Dan here with his expertise, I will do my best to be Dan.
I will have a lot of follow-up questions for you, Jenny.
I was afraid I knew you'd be waiting for me. Oh dear.
You're bad.
Maybe I have Dan's cell phone number handy, so I could. Okay. Excuse me, I'm just finding my right spot. So the Chief Financial Officer's report and recommendation, we have action required for sorry, I lost my spot. For the financial resolutions, which include the transfers, the approval of the financial statements for October 2020, approval of investments for October 2020, approval of interfund transfers, approval of appropriation modifications, approval of supplemental appropriations, approval of increase in petty cash funds, and the capital funds projects fund.
So moved. Second.
Mrs. Jessling, please call the roll.
Mrs. Briner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hassan,
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle,
Yes.
I vote yes, and Mr. Buckley.
Yes. Next on the agenda is unfinished business. I would just like to give the board a brief update on the Scapora project. During the past few weeks, the city manager and Mr. Wilson have been having conversations, questions, clarifications. Council is meeting tonight, and I'm told to vote on a development agreement, which is one of the first steps towards getting the city's approval for a tax abatement. Sometime this week, Mr. Wilson said that the city manager and he would like to do a conference call with me to talk about the process as this moves forward. It's possible that we could be talking about a resolution at our November 24th special meeting. But as these conversations unfold, I will update the board with each piece of information that comes. I think overall, our desire to build a more positive relationships with the city seems to be coming along nicely. So yeah, I'm pleased about that. But that's basically where we are in this process. But as more information comes, I will update you as it goes.
Thank you.
New business.
I was just going to ask if, kind of referencing back to what you were just sharing, Ken, that we could maybe develop some type of a policy that would help us frame future projects or requests, maybe working in tandem with the city, but certainly Dan could advise us on how that might look or what kind of a policy might make sense for us to use as a building framework.
Yeah, and I think that's a good idea because we talked at one of our work sessions about developing some criteria or checklists, which I took notes on. So I think that would be a place that those things could go in the policy. There are some blighted areas in Menor that have the potential to be redeveloped. And I think it would behoove us to have a policy guideline on how this is done. So I agree. But so we have a lot of work to do around this issue.
Seems like we talked about this at our last work session and said we would talk about it again at our next one, didn't we?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe
Yeah.
so.
I think because we needed to have more information and, and it sounds like we will have. And then I think it'll be real helpful when Dan can relate the specific conversations he's had with the city manager, as well as go over the financials with
I
this
agree.
deal.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing all the legwork on this, Ken, helping to give us the sort of feedback we needed and, helping kind of work with the city and the Sikoras and Dan in tandem on our behalf. So thanks.
Right. And, we have to give credit where credit is due. This was a catalyst from Mr. Porter's goals.
Yes.
So we're not going into executive session. So it is time for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Jetling, please call the roll.
Mr. Tuttle,
Yes.
Mrs. Hassan,
Yes.
Mrs. Briner,
Yes.
I vote yes, and Mr. Buckley.
Yes.
Mhm.
All right. So the meeting is adjourned.